to be, well, the last time we meet in the afternoon, because tomorrow it's going to be presentations. I am looking forward to all your presentations for tomorrow, but today it's going to be the last panel of the forum of this year, and I'm really excited to introduce this panel. It's titled Empowering Youth Engagement at City Level. So what I want to kind of have the message out of this panel is understand really how can we bring all the strategies and recommendations that we've heard about from the expert these days at a local level, and how can we actually get youth to be engaged. I mean, the fact that you're here means that you are already interested, that you're open to be engaged, but there are other ways in continuing that engagement that impact. So these two amazing organizations are going to talk about their work and maybe how you can get involved as well. But I'm going to just ask our panelists to briefly introduce yourselves, the organization that you represent, and your role in it. So I'm just going to start with Marta Sambujal. She is the president of the Energy Institute Young Professionals Networks, more specifically the London branch. And then we have Lili Tanui, who's the Hungary country representative of Yes Europe. So we'll start it off with Marta, and then we'll pass it on to Lili. Thank you.
Thanks, Belen. Hi, everyone. I've met a couple of people. Thanks. I don't think that ever happened to me before. No. I've met a couple of you, but I know I haven't met all of you, unfortunately. I'm Marta Oliveira, and my day-to-day job is not the Young Professionals Network, but probably the fun bit of my life, it is the Young Professionals Network, so I'm happy to be talking about this here. Just maybe to kind of give you a bit of context of where we're coming from as well. Lisa and Carolina did a presentation on Monday as part of the Sustainable Cities workshop on what the Young Professionals Network is and what the Energy Institute is, so I won't repeat that. I think where I'm coming from today really is just that we have such a good network and we're able to put together such a good network of young professionals. And our base currently is in London for the YPN branch that I head. But there's actually branches all over the globe, and it's all sort of under the umbrella of the Energy Institute. So I'm keen to talk a little bit more about what we actually do on a daily basis and actually what we deliver to our network every month, because I think there are so many interesting people here that could benefit maybe from those learnings, and maybe you can bring that to your own cities and sort of start building your networks, and sort of on such a dynamic industry as energy, make some friends, and at the same time make your life a bit easier, because that's what it all is about. So hopefully I can bring some of that knowledge today as well. As my day-to-day job, I also work in energy. I do more consulting on energy investments, especially for decarbonization of large infrastructure, so airports, ports, and other things. On the Young Professionals Network, we don't focus just on one or two types of energy. We actually try and cover all the topics that are either energy related or pushing a bit the boundaries around energy, but actually quite complemented to energy. And on a monthly basis, try and pick up the technologies and the policies and sort of any other markets that will influence also what's happening on the energy side, so carbon policies and others as well. So happy to touch on that as well. One thing though, so Carolina, she mentioned the initiative that the Energy Institute is running on Generation 2050. As Carolina mentioned, this is all about young professionals giving their voice around what we need, what we think the energy industry should look like in 2050, but more of that, what we need for us to be able to get there, and what we need as young professionals, right? And she mentioned the survey, and the survey's up now. So I just wanted to share the QR code. And I mean, do try, and if you're interested, do try and sort of fill in the survey, because to be honest, if it's 10 minutes of your life, but there will be 10 minutes also of maybe very important people in the Commission and the UK government in the Energy Institute, and that will really transform the kind of training that you have, the mentoring that you have. So it's really, you can really sort of change what you have available for us to put forward, or all our ambitions, everything you're doing on the white paper here today. So engaging is really important to be able to get there. So please, please, please do the survey. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lily Tanui. I'm from Kenya, but I actually studied in this university, although not this faculty, but the one just next to it. I studied bachelor's in environmental engineering, and I focused on green energy. And although this is not what I work on full-time, I'm the country representative of Yes Europe. And because maybe this organization had not been presented before, I thought of just doing a brief introduction for everyone. And yeah, so our vision is accelerating the energy transition. And actually, when I learned about EN, I thought we have a lot in common, and we also have some projects where we've worked together. So we have a platform of youth, and we have the international team, which we have the policy team, we have events at international levels, but we also have local chapters. So, and this is to localize energy transition, because what you'll do in Hungary is not what maybe someone will do in Germany, because the transition is happening at varying levels. So we have a representation both at the international and also at local levels. So, and this platform is for youth, mostly young professionals, but we also have professionals who've been in the industry for so long, and they have experience in the energy sector. So we give them a platform, they come together, they share ideas, we give them resources as well, and they can start their projects. So, yeah, this is how we work. We have, you can see the Yes, Europe is in the middle, so there is energy sustainability and climate change. We have the young professionals I talked about, and we also have engineers in the team and those who have policy and business backgrounds. So I think this is just saying the same thing. And I already explained this. So for those who would want to join us, you can think about it already, whether you'd want to be in the local teams, in the international teams, you're more than welcome. And whether you're interested in communications, in policy, in project management, in events, in finance, we have a place for you. So this is where we are currently. We are present in 21 countries. So, and we've also been working on having some partnerships with Africa, so yeah. This is how Yes Europe started. It started in Switzerland, and that's where we also are a registered NGO. So it is when young people came together just like this. This is when an idea came up, and after the registration, there have been yearly conferences. This year, we'll have it in Belgium, actually this month. So those who are interested should come. The registration is free. You just have to register and join us. It will be in Leuven. Some of the international events we've had, the Change Now Summit, the EUSEW, the Regeneration 2030, and yeah, these are some of the ongoing ones and some of the completed ones as well. I guess I'm more interested in the women in energy transition, and I'm happy that this panel is of women, so yes. I'll talk about this maybe later in some questions that Belen will be asking us. Yeah.
Thank you, Lily, and thank you, Marta. I hope you have some background in terms of understanding of what organizations focus on and what they're doing. I want to really go into the specific because I want to understand how your organization more specifically creates local impact in the energy sector. So what specific projects or initiatives you have ongoing or you plan to do that you think really create local impact wherever you are based in. So I'll start with Marta.
Yes. So, well, hopefully we do create impact. I do think so. But some learnings maybe there. So the Energy Institute, the way that it works is that itself, it's already a training skills, but also sort of a lobbying association for government. So it does both. And we sit under the Energy Institute, and under that, on the Young Professionals Council, there's the young professional branches, and ours is in London, but there's ones in Scotland, Africa, Middle East, there's Asia. So, and we sort of almost do similar things, but they are all based on a city level and what is important on a city basis and on a regional basis. The reason why it's important to also have this regional breakdown is because obviously the challenges that we may have in some countries in the Middle East are very different from maybe the UK. And the reason for that is because maybe there's a lot of funding that is coming from the Middle East, but there's no regulatory environment. Or in the UK, it's the other way around. There's a lot of regulatory environment, but it's more difficult to get funding for some cases, or it's more difficult to sort of develop projects because they take more time. So what we try and do is talk about the topics that are relevant on each city, and then we come together and try and sort of on a global basis really understand how we can best help these different communities, and if there's possibilities to collaborate between each other and really bring all the solutions forward. So in London, what we normally do is we have an event per month, and this event can be sort of a one evening panel event, and then everyone kind of chats and networks, and you meet people that are sort of in other parts of the energy industry, and then you can collaborate on projects, you can basically make friends. We try and make the events about important topics for the UK for that moment. So for example, last year, we did an event on offshore wind just right after the auction for offshore wind in the UK went bust. And this year, for example, we just did an event, very successful actually yesterday, on UK Labour policy and sort of what will be the future of energy with the new government. And then we're going to do one about COP next month. Then we can also touch on sort of other types of policy. So for example, we did one on carbon markets last year because we know that they are currently influencing energy developments, because now there's sort of a planning rule under the UK planning system that you need to bring biodiversity again for an energy project, for example. So we sort of touch on the topics that are important for the industry in general, because the industry is huge. There's so many technologies, there's growing technologies, there's the engineering side, there's the financing side, there's the law side, there's so much happening, no one knows everything. So what we try and do is make sure that whoever comes to our events is at least sort of informed about what's going on and can have some knowledge and can sort of contact some experts if they need to understand how that influences their work as well. So that's one of the first learnings that I'll probably touch on. Very relevant to make the topic of the events relevant for the audience that's actually on a city level, because that's what is going to bring people forward, and that's what is going to sort of support any actions going forward as well. So I'll start there. So topics that are relevant. And the second thing is we're all young. So let's not try and do something that's over the top working conference, because there's hundreds of that. And you can go and people meet for 2 seconds and then they never talk again, or they maybe talk again. And it's not really building on those connections. I think the work conferences are fantastic, but I think activities like this, you actually will make the friends that will be very helpful in the future. When you see or something and you want to call your friend, I have this issue, can you help me sort of collaborate on this project so we can actually have hydrogen for aviation? That's what really matters in the future. And the problem that our industry is growing so fast is also making that it's very difficult for us to understand how to sort of, who to meet, who to sit together, etc. So if we just make some friends, it's much easier for us to just sort of navigate all of those challenges. And because of that, I think we also try and focus a lot on to bring those fun activities into our network. So we do socials, we did a charity cycle last year, we did a book club. I mean, there's so many activities there that you can make and really bring people together to talk about areas that are important for them in energy, but at the same time kind of share a little bit of what they are on a person level. And I think that's really key. So I would probably say those are the two most important things to pass on. The other one is also, it's not that difficult to do a branch, and it's not that difficult to actually start something like this. It's basically you, a couple other friends, and you just start putting together events. Maybe your work can be a partner, your work offers the venue, you just contact some speakers on LinkedIn and you put together your first event. And then from there you'll meet someone and then you just go from there. That's how London started, that's how the majority of the YPN branches started. So the reason I'm saying this is if you don't have a Yes branch or a YPN branch or any networks in your city, why not try and start something? Because you might actually feel like that will benefit you, it will benefit the others, and it will create a little bit this environment that you also have here this week. So if this is something that you're interested in, just feel free to reach out, because it can be sort of really, really beneficial. Also, you'll do city-based, but you'll be part of a much wider global network. And that's also important, because if you start working on a project that's actually not in the city you're in, you can maybe try and connect with people that work in that jurisdiction, will help you understand the challenges, the opportunities there. Or if at some point you want to move to another country, and half of us actually don't live in the place where we're born, so maybe it's a way that you also don't go to a new place and you know no one, because you actually can have that base and maybe join part of the network. So just something to keep in mind, and yeah, just feel free to reach out to any of us on the YPN if this is something that you're keen to do.
Thank you, Marta. I think those are great points. And I want to direct the same question to you, Lily. How is Yes Europe creating local impact in the energy sector? Maybe we can talk a bit more about the projects that you had on the slide before.
Yeah, so I guess we are creating local impact through our local chapters. And as I said before, the main reason for this is to localize projects in each of the countries. So for example, the current ongoing project that I thought about and I was informed I would be speaking here was the Power Youth, and this specifically empowers youth in energy communities. And I guess everyone who is here already knows about energy communities and how it's huge now. So yeah, it mainly emphasizes youth leadership in adopting sustainable energy practices. And yeah, I won't say maybe this is directly related to youth at the city level, but we were also present in COP28 and COP29. And I would say that the fact that youth don't normally get don't get these opportunities to be present in such international events, it's a good thing for them to come together and bring their expertise and also make sure that their opinions are being heard. So, yeah, I think these are some of other projects, but I'll share some more that are not in the slide. Is that starting from this month, each chapter has been requested to come up with it's like a report on the current energy policies in each country, the developments, and what we feel should be improved. So this will be very tailored to each country, and I think it will be important for us to learn from each other, and also we can share it with the ministries and see whether this can be adopted. So yeah.
Thank you, Lily. Great to hear about your projects as well. I would like to, well, before I open up the questions to the audience, so do please take this time to think about questions. But in your experience, what's the most effective way of mobilize other young people in your community and joining your networks and becoming active participants in those initiatives? Because, I mean, most of these initiatives are on a voluntary basis, you know. Most of us need either still study or work full time, so sometimes it's, you know, we dedicate the time that we can to these initiatives, but what do you think, let's say in a few points, is the most effective way to kind of engage people in? Maybe, yeah, Marta, you want to go?
Well, to be honest, I think it's the people, because it's just very passionate and very interested people that join things like this. and applied for this and are here for a week, well, that's exactly the same that I see happening in London or anywhere else, is if you really, really want to be part of this, and there's a lot of passion going on to sustainability right now, that's probably 80% of the way there. Because when it's on a voluntary basis, you can't just ask people to do things that they don't want to do, and you shouldn't. And so you just need to choose the right people to be with you on the journey and make sure that they're happy to sort of push it forward and that they have the same values. We have a committee of 14 that gets chosen every year. And I mean, it's impressive to see how many applications we get. We got 60 applications for 8 spots this year. And the people that come through are targeted, are figuring out things on their own, sort of pushing for new boundaries, are suggesting new topics. A lot of it is just about the people. And I think the other side is really just making sure that you choose the right environments for people to be together. So it was a bit coming back to my earlier point as well on there's already a lot of work conferences and work networks that are very professional related. So maybe just the best thing is to try and bring something new. And I think what we bring is it's the balance between, okay, we can talk about work and the industry, but we're also going to talk about on being an environment, we're all sort of a friendly environment and we're all sort of more or less at the same stage in our careers. So I think bringing on that balance and maybe sort of trying to make it a bit more informal also really helps bringing people together. There is one thing though that I think could be helpful to mention, which is on what we have now and what we actually don't have that much. I think we're working a lot on, and I think we're doing it well, on what's happening now, because the industry itself just goes on by so fast that we're at least doing a good job in making sure that people at least try and get updated. Now, there's a big part of being part of a network, which is how are we actually looking into the future? Because like one of the big gaps that we see talking to young professionals that come to the event, etc., is I'm super interested about this. I'm a super passionate person, but I lack a little bit of focus sometimes because I can work in 100 different things because the industry moves so fast, because I want to try 100 different things and there's just no time for all of that. So what do I do? And I think that is one of the main key gaps that we're trying to also focus on this year. Part of it is through that initiative on Generation 2050, because I think it's actually asking people, what do you need? But the other part of it is to understand how do we best bring together these networks on not just one event per month, but can we put them on a platform where they can actually speak to each other when the opportunity arises, right? So, and you can also include maybe some of the speakers that go to the conferences as well that are super keen to be involved, but then they don't really know how. So that mentoring side of the equation, I think, is something that's really missing and that we need to work a little bit more on. And I think the other bit is on the training and the skills, especially when there are new technologies coming through, there's new sort of valuation of investments, there's new policies on ESG and on governmental levels, etc. So how do we make sure that we keep those trainings and those skills updated so that people can really deliver on them and deliver on as best as they can?
Those are great points, Marta. And maybe, Lily, can you give us your perspective on maybe what are some effective strategies in implementing, kind of incorporating young people into your own network?
Yeah, I think one that I find very important is putting specific youth in something that they are interested in, because even if, yes, Europe is quite big, we make sure that when you're, for example, registering, you let us know which of the groups are you interested in. Are you interested in communications? Do you feel like you can maybe say something about policies and all that? So that you are not just all over the place, but you are focused, because then in that way you can make progress and you can build yourself more. And another thing that I've seen, for example, in the chapter here, that most members are interested in opportunities. So for Hungary, it's not easy, for example, to find events like this in English. So when I take time to share events and I see them attending and them giving me feedback that they've been here for so long and they were feeling so lost, but they could attend this event and they could network. So that really gives them hope, you know, that there is something going on. And I would also say that another way we mobilize is making information more digestible, because if you listen to all these conferences, if you read some of these reports, then sometimes it's not easy to understand, you know, what's my role in this. So making it easy for them that as an individual, you have your own part to play, and also that this report might be, you know, with a lot of jargon, but this is what it simply says. So we have professionals who try to simplify information so that youth can understand it better and maybe find ways to act or take responsibility.
Thank you. So, yeah, young people are very passionate, and maybe the importance is joining these networks to actually turn that passion into concrete impact, in a word. But does the audience have any questions for Marta or Lily? Or have you heard about these organizations before? Yes?
Thank you. My name is Asfandiar. So my question is, what are the current challenges for youth participation in energy transition and energy dialogue? What are the barriers and challenges? Thank you.
So maybe we can start with Lily first, and then we'll go on to Marta.
Okay.
If you
Yeah. So I think I would say the first challenge is lack of us being involved. You know, we are being left out in this. For example, just in the COP that is going to happen, I've been seeing a lot of youth complaining that, you know, it's not easy to attend. The accommodation that they even provide for us is quite expensive. So, and then we have the same old people in the same sittings, yet they are going to make decisions that are going to affect us more and our children more. So the fact that we are ready, we want to be heard, we want to be, you know, we want to contribute, but we are being sidelined. I think that is a challenge that I can say. And then another one is lack of resources. For example, we have really brilliant ideas, but we can't bring them to fruition because we don't have funds, we don't have the support that we need. So I guess those two are common. And then the other thing I can touch on is that even if someone is motivated, at the end of the day, we all want to pay our bills, you know? So even if we are driven by passion, youth want something that will help them to pay their bills. So if we had things that could maybe give stipends, so we even go to conferences, maybe you're invited to big events, but at the end of the day, maybe they just invite you because they want presentation, or they want to be seen that, oh, there was a youth, you know, who is under 35, and that's all. And then these big companies will pocket all the money. So those are, maybe I can say those three are the main challenges for now.
Marta, do you agree? Do you have any additional points to Lily's?
I agree, especially on the point that we're not being heard. But I think it's also because sometimes we also don't know what's the best way to say it. So we are coming very hard on an industry that it's a dinosaur industry. And for a lot of time, it was, a bunch of white men in oil and gas that decided everything that was going to happen in the world. And suddenly we come and we have new ideas. We don't have the same experience as them on a work basis, but we do have, you have knowledge on the new technologies that are coming through. We have more knowledge than them on the new markets that are coming through. And for once in this industry, we can actually power in and power through, because there are things that we know that they don't know, and they need to depend on us on certain things, and not just because we want them to depend on us, but also because they have their shareholders and the people that they actually respect telling them, no, this is not going to work unless you actually decarbonize. Now, how do we transform that dynamic in the industry into, I have this idea, I think it will work, can we do that? I just want to give maybe an example, because that's probably the best way to do it. First, I think be informed, and I take on that point of maybe go to conferences, be part of networks, just be informed, know what's actually going on. But then more than that is like, how can you on a practical basis, actually do something about it on your day-to-day? Can you introduce a new topic to your team? Can you bring on a new project because you met someone that actually could support you on developing that project in your company? Can you internally start changing things? So for example, my company, we normally do energy systems not on a technical basis, more on a commercial basis for airports, ports, and others. And when we consider energy systems, we say it's solar, it's hydrogen, it's carbon capture, whatever. But we never think about nature. And I know this seems still such a weird topic, but on the other hand, half of these airports, they have probably 3 times the land compared to the actual airport size. What do they do with it? Nothing. And there's so many opportunities that you can do, that you can use that land. You can look at energy developments, yes, but sometimes it's agricultural land. Can we do something with it? Can we complement biodiversity, and can we complement, if we're talking with a water company, the actual impact that they're having on water contamination with the rest of the energy development? Yeah, we can, and it's actually quite important that we do that, because otherwise we are going to develop everything in energy and we're not going to have the other side of the balance on other scale. So I was thinking about it, and I started talking about this in my company, and I'm quite lucky because they actually do hear a little bit. I had to put a whole business case together, like I was talking to a client, and I had to sell it to them like I was selling it to a client, and they only accepted it because I show them what financially and pragmatically makes sense. We don't live in a fairy tale world, I'm sorry, but we don't. And I think the only way that we're going to go through is, one, yes, if we sort of shout, look what you're doing and this is not good for sustainability, but the language that they speak is not that. They speak in numbers and they speak in profit, and that is always going to be a bit, at least now, it's still a bit more important than ticking all the ESG boxes. It's changing, but it's still the case. So if you want to be heard, you need to be speaking their language as well. And I think it's really, really important that that's one of the learnings that we take through on anything that we propose, because you'll see that people will start hearing you. You just sort of need to make them hear you as well.
Thank you. I think those are really great points. It's how to get involved, how to be heard, but also how to basically make a business case for all the proposals that we have. And I'm always amazed at how much we can do with the limited funds and support that we have sometimes, both I'm sure your organizations and us at AEN. But do we have other questions from the audience for Marta and Lily?
I think sorry, it was me. I think we have here a question. The question is, what is your opinion about engaging also with those oil and gas companies to form the energy transition? Do you think excluding them totally from events or other things would help or even be hurt?
Do you want to go first?
That's a tough one.
Okay. I mean, this is my personal opinion, so please don't merge it with the Energy Institute or my job, because I'm probably going to be banned, so please, this is just between these 4 walls. My opinion is that I don't think we should exclude them. That doesn't make any sense. They have all the money. So, and the thing is, if we can't change the underlying energy suppliers because they are, then what are we doing? Because if we can't change their mind and if we can't show them that the energy transition is also profitable for them, then we're not making it the right way. So I definitely think that we should have them in. What I think we need to do is convincing them that the energy transition is a better way to begin on energy supply rather than continuing with oil and gas. And I also think, to be honest, again, this is my personal opinion, we need to be a bit pragmatic on how we look at oil and gas. I mean, obviously the goal is that we have as best as we can all the energy being renewable and that we move towards that. But there's a lot of infrastructure change that comes with that. And we also need to sort of understand what are the challenges on their side so we can best help them. Sometimes the best way to unlock things is to understand what is the person's challenge to change rather than keep complaining about they're not changing. Because maybe they're not changing because they don't know what to do, because all their profits are coming from this energy source and suddenly the other energy source is not that profitable. So how do you actually unlock their challenges and help them out rather than just being always against them? That's just my personal perspective on everything. And especially I think collaboration is probably almost always the best way to go forward rather than sort of, you know, looking at everyone as a competitor.
Do you agree, Lily, with Marta's points? Do you have any additional insights?
Yes, I agree. I feel like if we exclude them, then who will we be talking to change, you know, or to at least accelerate the change? And I also feel like as much as we can be against them, until we have a 100% answer or solution, we might still need them, you know. So it's a journey and it will take time. We just have to be patient and include them, you know, and as she said, also see it from their lenses, you know, what are the challenges they are facing. Although I know all of us know that they can be very selfish because, of course, it's profits above everything, so we have to be pragmatic, but I hope we'll reach there one day.
Great. I think we have time for just one more final question. And do we have more from the audience? Or yes, up there. Very brief, please, and brief answers.
Sorry.
First of all, thank you very much for your presentation. That was super interesting. And I get your point about including them in the conversation for pragmatic reasons and the need to be patient, right? Because, as you say, it's dinosaur industries and it moves really slowly. My question would be do we actually have time to be patient when looking at more like climate science and what is happening now, and we're seeing what's happening in Spain also right now. So ideally we would be patient if we had, 100 years more to spare, but we don't really. So yeah, that was just my point.
No, thank you for raising the point. I don't know if you want to maybe briefly follow up on that.
I do have a question for you. I mean, if we take out of the theoretical level of do we have time to be patient, because it is a good point, but actually what do we do about it? How do you be not being patient? What do you think is the best way to deal with that and really push the industry forward?
Was that a rhetorical question?
It was an actual question, because I think this is a lot of what sort of I see this happening all the time, even on conferences, for example, on specific technologies that you go to, like an infrastructure conference, and they're like, we want to invest in roads and we want to invest in hospitals because that's like what is needed, and that's all true. But I think if we can get there and tell them that's very true, and I agree with that, and I understand your point. But look, there's also this opportunity that equal to your hospital, how do you make energy and sustainability an equal priority to them? And the way to do that is either you put so many costs on the product, like you can do on fossil fuel products, that suddenly it's just like the profits that they had before are not going to be the profits that they have now, because there's so much sort of costs happening. Or you can just decrease the price of installing renewable energy and increase their profits, so then it basically balances out the current product that they have. So I'm not very patient. Well, that's just me. But I think maybe instead of asking the question about, well, then how do we get there because they're so slow, I think my approach would be, well, how can I convince them that this is actually the best way to go and that there's ways that they can actually go faster? Because I think that's maybe the only approach that won't sort of get people further away and having to wait even more. It will bring everyone together, and that will make you accelerate the industry change.
I think this is a great conversation, and if you want to continue this after, I'm sure Marta and Lily will be available during the coffee break. But please join me in thanking Marta and Lily for this great conversation. Now I'm just gonna quickly introduce Statkraft, our last guest for today. So we're gonna hear from Kate Ingram first, and then two of their trainees will speak about their experience here. So please join me on. Kate, okay. Then I guess you can go first. Yes.
Should we see if she's here?
Yes. Sorry, one second. She's here. Great. That's great news. Great. This is one by the way.
Yeah, I think we were just going to sit down. I think she's doing the bulk of the talking. That's fine. Oh, you got mine then.
So,
Is that there too?
yeah, but then it starts on the next one and then it just starts, right?
Yes. So we have the presentation on. We'll be able to see the notes here.
Yeah.
If you prefer to change a slide from here or here, you have
Okay.
both options.
Okay.
Do you prefer to have the mic and go around, or is it okay?
Can I do both?
Yeah,
Or no?
yeah, yeah. Of course, the notes are only visible here.
Yeah, but don't worry.
You know. Okay.
I've done this one before.
Okay, I imagined. But so I'll just leave it here in case you decide to use it.
Okay.
And then I'm sure I think they will need it because they need to.
This one's I did a test. Okay, so then I will just Yep. Is it live? Yep. Okay. Everybody, are we awake? Yes, yeah. Am I right after lunch? Sort of. Okay, I'm going to take you guys through a breathing exercise. I'm just kidding. No, I'm here to talk about careers in the energy sector. So hopefully if I click this, okay, you're in the right place. So my name's Kate Aunas Ingram. I'll show you in a second a little bit about who I am. But we are here to talk about the green shift, the energy transition, but the career aspect of it. So how many of you are already working within the energy sector? Okay, quite a few of you. Yeah. Okay. And is there anyone who wants to work in it? Okay.
Still want to work?
Okay, then there will be something of value here, hopefully for all of you. But this is, a lot of times people have these slides that said, this is my title and these are the companies I worked in. But because I am very focused on the employer brand of a company, right? You can put the name up, you can put the title up, but what is it really like to work at Statkraft? This is what it's like to work at Statkraft. And my dog is there because he joins some Teams calls. Yeah, I'm a fully dog person. But this is just kind of like a week in the life of working in Statkraft. So I always find it's so much more interesting going a bit behind the scenes and actually seeing what is it like. I'm head of attraction and mobility at Statkraft. So we have the recruitment team in my area, employer branding, internal mobility, early careers, so the trainee programs, internship programs, and also we look after onboarding and offboarding. So I call them the best parts of the people HR space, pretty much. So who had heard of Statkraft before you saw our logo? Okay, again, improvement from last year. Yeah. So we are, who just call out what country does Statkraft come from?
Norway.
Good job. Okay, you guys are awake. But I never go into any presentation without some slides on who we are, because even within the energy sector here, we are the best kept secret of the sector. That's what we often say. And I think a lot of it has to do with the Norwegian roots of this company. In Norway, you don't always go out and say, we're amazing, we've done this, look at our track record. You're successful, but in the background. You don't always tell everyone what you're doing. And I think that's affected our brand and people knowing exactly who we are and our impact. So this is our vision, which is to renew the way the world is powered. And we created this vision about almost 2 years ago now, because we had a vision for many, many years that basically captured what we were doing every day. And we wanted to create a vision that was a stretch goal for the organization. Where do we want to go towards 2030? And we have our 3 values, which is we act responsibly. Safety, when you're building hydropower dams, safety has to be part of your DNA. So it is everything, whether you're in an office role, whether you are out on a dam or building a wind park, safety is paramount. And it goes CEO down. It is just part of the company. And then we grow together. And I think I used to work in consumer goods. So this was working in Statkraft was the first time I worked in this sector. And what I have realized, and I think all of us at Statkraft, is you cannot renew the way the world is powered alone. Yeah, you need to work collaboratively. It's across functions, across units, across teams. You cannot do it in isolation. And I think learning how to collaborate between companies on projects, on partnerships, this is actually a skill that we're going to need much more of over the next few years. Because again, you cannot do it alone. One company cannot do it alone. So we grow together. I mean, it just is part of how we work. and then we make an impact, I think you can't work in renewables without really feeling like you're working towards the solution, right? It's very tangible, it's very concrete that we're trying to make a difference. We're trying to solve the climate crisis. And you can feel that regardless of where you're working in the organization, everything is connected. And in some companies, it can be hard to see how your role connects to the bigger picture or the bigger vision. But I think in renewables, but also within Statkraft itself, you can really see that. And it's obviously very motivating and inspiring. So this is, just to kind of sum up from a strategy perspective. And I think renewables and energy, it's an up and down game. Right? Incredibly cyclical. And because of that cyclical nature, you need to adjust your strategies and ambitions quite often. I think no one predicted how low the electricity prices were going to go. Yeah, even the best analysts out there could not see that. So it's expect the unexpected. So you need to adapt to that. And so our strategy is we have 4 principles. So we want to provide clean, flexible hydropower. Hydropower, this goes back to the beginning of Statkraft's roots. A Norwegian company starting with 1 hydropower dam. So we'll never let that part go. That is the backbone of the company. And then we have accelerating solar, wind, and battery storage. These are areas, markets that we have become much bigger players in, but we still have a way to go on the growth front. And then we have a very commercial part of our organization that's about delivering green market solutions to our customers, so selling PPAs and such. And then you need to scale your energy technologies. So yes, we have hydropower. Yes, we're building solar parks and wind parks. But you also need to be creating new technologies to accelerate or optimize or improve the way that we're working. And so yes, we want to rely on people out there creating those technologies, but also we want to be doing that as well. Almost like working in an incubator type of model. Okay. So if we look at it in simplicity, because I think the sector is complex, Statkraft as a company is incredibly complex, but when it rains, and we're always happy when it rains, right? We never complain about rain. So when it rains, we produce electricity through our hydropower plants. When the wind blows, we produce electricity through our wind parks. And when the sun shines, we do the same through our solar farms, right? So kind of when you break it down into that level, it's pretty simple. Did I skip one? Yeah. And I also remember from last year, there was a lot of questions and interest on the sustainability front. So just wanted to include that. Sustainability, it has gone from kind of a bit of a differentiator to a hygiene factor. Right? It's a really elevated part of any energy company. So you can see here, this is just, we are 97% renewable. That's pretty high. There's a lot of companies, and again, I'm not trying to be tit for tat, but there's a lot of companies that say we're a renewable company, and then 0.01% is reinvested into renewables. Right? So we can call ourselves the OGs when it comes to renewables. And then also in terms of environmental serious incidents, health and safety, we can have health and safety at the top, but there are still things that happen. And then we take those situations and try to learn from them and prevent them in the future. But it can be very difficult, especially when you're reliant on a lot of vendors and secondary suppliers. The supply chain itself, it's so complex to try to follow that impact throughout. And then when it comes to women in top management, we have a female CEO. That changed since I was here last year. And our top management team is actually almost 50-50 men and women. But we need to work on that at other layers within the leadership side of things. But it's an important goal that you can't just say you want to have diversity. You actually need to do things to make it happen. And then we have, in terms of our car fleet, our score for CDP, and then carbon intensity as well. So it's quite an amazing story, actually, where, you see this guy over here, almost 130 years ago. It's going to be 130 years in a couple months. To go from this Norwegian company in the 1800s, one hydropower dam, to the largest renewables company in Europe. It's a pretty amazing story. And that footprint of that history, you feel it in the organization still. So it's something I think that people are quite proud about. And not that many people know that we have that long history. So I'm going to give you guys a quick video before I talk to you a bit more about careers. So hopefully this works. There's no sound? No. Oh. Yeah. There we go. Perfect. Thought it was very relevant since we're here talking to young professionals and energy enthusiasts. And you guys are going to hear from two of our young professionals and some initiatives that are very much connected to the Future Decides. Because it's not just about saying it, right? It's how do you enable it. So you'll hear a bit about that shortly. So transitioning from, okay, we know who Statkraft is now. Hopefully everyone here will put their hand up next time that you know who we are. But does anyone know what this number stands for? Yeah, it could be anything, right? Yeah. But this is actually this calculated skills gap in the green economy towards 2030. Right? So we talked about the cyclical nature of the sector. That creates increased skills gaps. The more you go, you ramp up, you cut back, you ramp up, you cut back, and this skills gap gets bigger and bigger. So having the recruitment team in my area, it is already hard to find the right people. But then it will just get harder and harder. And your skill sets will become more and more in demand and scarce. And it will also be harder for us to actually make the ambitions and goals that we need to in the next few years. Also, on the bridging the skills gap, I think maybe this is a better strategy with this one. But we can also see that there is a significant amount of skills gaps through a lack of education and training. So I think in this room, you guys are a great example of trying to bridge that gap. But for example, in Norway, Stavanger, the home of oil, we have the Petroleum Technical University of Norway. We don't have the Technical University of Wind or Solar. right? There's still a significant gap. There are programs coming, but it's not enough to bridge that gap. And then we also have the gender balance challenge within the green transition that is, again, every year becoming more and more of a gap. And then we also see at the same time, by 2030, 1.2 million new jobs within solar, wind, and energy we will require as well. So these are things that they can be depressing, but they also can spur action. Yeah, we need, it's a collective team effort to make this all work. And so then where does Statkraft come in here? Because there's so many, I think probably over the last 5 years, there's so many different players. There's energy, brown companies going green, there's startups, there are so many more players out there. So what is actually different when it comes to Statkraft? So I think, of course, number one, very few people know we're the biggest producer of clean energy in Europe. Also, having been in this game for 130 years, obviously we weren't the same company we are today 130 years ago, but having been here for so long and been stable and financially viable, those have impacts. And then when we look at our ambitions, where we want to go towards 2030, I mean, it's a big leap as well. So we don't kind of compromise. We don't take the easy road. And then we also, when we talked about sustainability and ethical standards, I mean, we always say it is serious in Statkraft. Like we said, it's in every layer of the organization. And then this collaborative piece. Yeah, and I mean, everyone says it's fun. Of course, not every day is fun. But it's exciting. And you're working with just such bright minds. People who are so passionate, probably like many of you, you're so passionate about what you're doing. And you want to tell someone else and collaborate and work together to find solutions. So it's a really dynamic environment. And I also wanted to just share, these are a few of the kinds of things that you can do in the renewable sector and in Statkraft as well. And I think we've put in bold the extra big ones are the ones that everyone is looking for. There is such a shortage of these areas. Project managers, skilled workers, so out working on the assets. IT developers, I mean, we haven't had enough of them for 15 years. Cybersecurity, I mean, we are managing just assets that are at the highest level from a government perspective. Sustainability as well. As I mentioned, it is just everywhere. Battery project managers, power trading analysts, right? And then that is just the surface. But those are the roles that, there is such a gap out there. And as we see, it's just going to grow over time. Also, I just wanted to share a few, and I realize these were all Norwegian. They're real people. They're not fake people. But they are all Norwegians. But it just gives you a bit of an example of what you can do. So we have a trainee over there who started in our program and now is a VP, just got her first VP job. And she was a trainee in 2019. And Ingeborg, she was a trainee and now she's an executive vice president in corporate management. And then we have Ola Herman, who went through the skilled workers program. So starting at an asset, getting education, and now moving into more of a specialist role. So there is lots of pathways, and also you do not have to want to be a leader to progress in a renewables company. Yeah, being a high-level expert is just as important now as it is being a leader. And I think that's an important distinction for all of you now, thinking about your career, that you don't have to be a leader just to progress. So it's an important thing to remember. And these are, again, I think some of you are at different stages of your career, but this is also how we engage young professionals and students in our organization. And it's not only about kind of bringing people into our organization, but it's also about supporting the sector in itself, whether we can bring someone in as a summer intern and then have them flourish at another renewable company. It's a team effort working together for the sector. So I think I will leave the trainee program for now, and we'll go through it. But just before I pass things over, you will hear about the Future Board. And the Future Board was something we created about 2-3 years ago, because you saw the video about the Future Decides, right? So how do you turn that into a real life action point? We created the Future Board, which is made up of 12 young employees at Statkraft, under the age of 32. And they sit on this board for 1 year, and they directly advise our CEO. Yeah, so they have different meeting points. They have topics, projects, you'll hear about this, but they get to advise our CEO. Right, so that's really putting your money where your mouth is and giving them an actual audience with her to try and provide some blind spots or different perspectives. So that was a really great way for us to show that we really mean it. So I think I will end there, and just wanted to share as well that it's not just about, as I said, it's not just about Statkraft, it's about the whole sector working together. But I think when it comes to choosing to work in a company like Statkraft, it's about your own development, it's about the work you do and the impact it has on a societal front, and then also it's about the long-term next generation perspective as well. So thank you very much. Maybe I will pass things over to...
Prova.
Is this working? Yeah. Nice. Is this one also working?
Yeah, it does.
I might use this one instead.
Do you want your phone back?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah? No, I'll use this one. Okay. Thank you, Kate. I'm glad you showed up. I didn't fancy winging my way through your slides. So I think the idea is that Kate's given you a bit of an overall flavour of who we are, what the sort of general ideas are for careers in the industry, and then we're here to provide some specific case studies. So my name's Harry. I'm going to talk a little bit about Statkraft's Future Board. Oh, not the right slide. And some of the highs and lows of my sort of relatively short career in the industry so far. So I studied chemical engineering at university. And I had a pretty strong sense, as I'm sure a lot of you did, when I was in my final year as an undergraduate, that I wanted to work in the renewables industry. But I had very little idea of what that could look like or would look like. So I did some research. I sent off a load of applications, I think it was 22 applications, to various companies that looked interesting in the sector. And the first low of my career was that 21 of those companies either didn't respond or rejected me out of hand. But luckily, the 22nd company, Evolution Clean Energy, which was a subsidiary of Statkraft at the time, took me on in the position of a GIS intern, which was a surprise to me because I'd never heard of GIS before. But it was a good learning opportunity. So for those that aren't familiar, GIS is a digital mapping software. I was using it to search for new wind and solar sites. And it was a really cool way to get into the industry because you felt like you were having a tangible impact from day one. You know, by the time I left my 3 months there were 5 new wind farms in the portfolio, and 2 of those have now been submitted into planning. So it really felt like, you know, that was the reason I was there, was to make that impact, and I could see that immediately. I then went back to university, did my master's studies, and then took a job at a startup that were doing energy system modelling. Unfortunately, after a few months, another downward step in my career, it became clear that their funding was insecure, and I was going to have to look for another job. Luckily, Statkraft had acquired Evolution at that time, and they opened a position in their wind team, and I took on a position as a project developer, which eventually grew into full project management. I don't know if there's any project managers in the room. Okay, yeah, you look quite tired. That makes sense. So yeah, you have a really good insight into basically every aspect of development. It's a great job. You become a bit of a jack of, or I did anyway. You might be much more of an expert than me. You become a bit of a jack of all trades, master of none. So for me, as a sort of first proper job in the industry, it was amazing. You get sort of commercial, legal, land, like as broad a background as you could possibly want in the career. But actually, to my surprise, after doing that for a few years, I actually started to miss my engineering background, which I never thought I would say after graduating. And probably shouldn't say this in front of our head of attraction, but I started to look for careers outside of Statkraft to try and sort of scratch that itch. But luckily, that was aligned quite well with when Statkraft started looking at hydrogen in the UK. That was a technology that had always interested me from when I was a student. And I did what I could to be part of that team. I was going for lunch with the sort of one or two team members. I was just trying to be friendly with them. And eventually they relented. A position opened up. I applied to it. And that's now what I do. So I'm a technical project manager, which means that I manage all of the engineering deliverables for our portfolio of hydrogen projects in the UK. And this job, I've gone through various steps to get here, but I've landed somewhere that I absolutely love. I am working on some really cool, interesting projects. At the small scale, we're looking at using green hydrogen to offset natural gas in glass manufacturing facilities in the UK. And at a larger scale, we are working on some of the world's first green ammonia facilities. So to be involved in that and sort of be present at the start of the industry, it's a really amazing opportunity. I actually wrote something down earlier when I think it was Marta was speaking. You mentioned, can't find you here, but she mentioned that young people, one of the important things was that we do have genuine insight, and it's not just that we shouldn't just be there to sort of be a seat at the table and show that the company's interested in our voices. There are areas where we are sort of leaders, thought leaders, and being involved in a new industry is a really good example of that. Nobody's worked in hydrogen for 3 decades. So me having 4 or 5 years experience in the industry, my opinion's not the most educated in the world, but it's not far off there at Statkraft. There's not those old heads that have been, I can tell you when that was done in the 60s and you're completely wrong in your approach. So it's a really good way of having that impact. This slide just shows some of the benefits of the job. Number one for me is the amount of travel that I've done. So whether that was working as a developer and a project manager, visiting some projects in some of the most remote and beautiful parts of Europe, or sitting on trains to conferences across Europe. But now, in my position as an engineering manager, I'm responsible for doing the due diligence on all of the electrolyzer manufacturers, the equipment that makes the hydrogen. And luckily for me, they tend to be located in pretty interesting places. So in the last 12 months, I've been to New York, New Orleans, Toronto. So it's a really, really big bonus of the job. And another thing specifically about Statkraft that's great is they really encourage mobility. So just this morning, I got a contract through to arrange for a secondment into the Oslo office for 6 months next year. So it's really encouraged, and it'll be a really good opportunity. This is just some pictures of me looking quite gormless and pointing vaguely in the direction of future projects, and also looking absolutely tiny next to one of the biggest guys I've ever met on a site visit to the US. So Kate mentioned this. Oh God, that's a bit loud. Kate mentioned this, but one of the last thing I wanted to speak about was the future board. So we've had an introduction. There's 12 individuals, 6 of whom are trainees, and 6 are, like me, just normal employees from the company under the age of 32. And we have a mandate to advise the CEO on various topics throughout the year. So that can be things that are important to us as individuals, but also things that are important to the CEO and are of strategic importance to the company. We had our first topic was on sustainability and information sharing, and that was really interesting. And it's a great time to be in the position because we've got a new CEO. So we've had insights from 2 really big leaders of a massive company. And one of our first tasks, the new CEO, is to look at her communication and how she can build a really strong rapport with the employees to sort of drive us all in the right direction, I suppose. But away from the projects, my main sort of favourite thing about the future board is less what we're doing and more what it represents. I'd wrote down something else from the talks earlier. So Lily's comment was about, again, actually having an impact rather than just visibility. And to be honest, when I applied for the Future Board, it was a concern of mine that this is going to look great on LinkedIn and Statkraft might wheel us out for a few presentations, but what are we actually going to achieve? And it's been really clear from day one that they really value our opinions, as long as they're useful and thought through. And particularly the new CEO really wants feedback from us. So if you've got a job and your company doesn't have a junior board or a future board, I really would recommend that as something to push for within your company. Thank you.
Great. Best for last, always. So, hi, my name is Alejandra Galeano. I am originally from Colombia, and I decided to study in Norway, and I did a master in industrial ecology. I am an environmental engineer, and I just love the energy sector also from the start. I joined Statkraft 1 year ago. I have been with the company no more than, 13 months. And it has been an incredible journey. In the last 13 months, I have been living in 3 countries. I started in Oslo, I moved to Cork, and then I finished my rotations in Spain. Both 3 opportunities were amazing. I'm a sustainability fan, and I knew from the beginning that also that's what I wanted to do. And so then my first rotation was with my home base, like the main team that will take me in as soon as I'm done. And it was to work through environmental management in 11 countries, because Statkraft has activities in 11 countries in Europe, and 7 different technologies, which all are different, which all have different legislation and environmental requirements or social licenses that we need to acquire in order for us to be successful. Then I moved to Cork. That was difficult. I have to say that the weather was not nice. But the team was the best team that I had in that city. The Irish team is a well-established team that has a lot of construction projects, and they have something valuable that both the Irish and the UK team, and is social and community engagement. So as you know, we are nowhere liked, even though that we are providing grid energy, we have a lot of social opposition. So we need to find ways in order to engage with them. We need to make them, they are in power and they know the impact that we have, but we need to be able to make them understand why are we providing value for them, for the community, and for the environment. And that's what the team in Ireland does. And I was able to be part of the team. I was able to drive with the team and knock on some doors to talk with the communities, and that was really nice. And then I moved to Spain, where I work with the topics that I like the most, because as I mentioned, I study industrial ecology, so I like climate change and circularity, which are 2 topics that are gaining more traction now. As you know, the more we want to build, the bigger our material footprint will be, the more CO2 emissions we're going to also produce, even though that in the future, in the long run, we're going to have a shorter or a smaller impact. I wanted to mention, that Statkraft has a sustainability strategy. I don't have the pillars here, but I sort of touch upon them here. So we have 4 pillars. We work towards biodiversity, we work towards the just transition, climate, and circularity. So everything that we do towards sustainability is built up those 4 topics. And our strategy is towards that, and our action plans are towards that as well. So what is like to work at Statkraft? I will have to say that it's a lot of traveling as well. I was able to visit most of 3 sites in Ireland, but at the same time enjoy my free time going to the cliffs or just having natural walks in natural parks in Ireland. Beautiful country. I will definitely go back with a better raincoat. And then also in Spain, we just had a really big portfolio for a different country, for a different company called Enerfin. And we have a big challenge with that companies because most of their wind farms are a bit old. So everything that is coming up for that acquisition needs to be repowered. So we were able, with my team, that's all of us, and all of us are women, which is great. And we were there to see how they work actually with biodiversity, because it's one of the sites that have the highest bird collision in that area, in Navarra, in Spain. And they have been implementing monitoring systems in order for us to predict, or sort of like to know when to stop our wind farms, in order for us to have a lower impact into the biodiversity of that area. And then I wanted to finish sharing you why StarCraft after 13 months is still a big yes for me, why I see myself in the company for a long time if they decided to keep me. And the first and most important one is the sustainability strategy. So I think right now is the best moment to be at StarCraft. We have a new brand strategy that has ambitious goals. That's what we have now. It's finally us playing in the same field as our competitors. So it's not like Ostret and then StarCraft sort of in the middle. And that's great. That's great because it means that I have a lot of value to provide. Not many people like circularity or know actually what it is or what it means to transition to a circular economy. So having a strategy that has that in the pillar is just the best place for me to be. And then their values. I have to say that I have experienced their values in my day-to-day work. I like to think of companies as a person. So if you want to build a meaningful relationship with somebody, you will appreciate them to have the same values as you have. So I have seen how StarCraft is responsible with the communities, how they just don't impose their projects. They hear and they bring options, what we call community benefit funds or community benefit sharing initiatives, where we tell them how our project is not only going to provide you with clean energy, we're going to provide you with better places to be, lights for your sports centers. And is, of course, you might think that sounds more like a corporate responsibility, but it's not when you have a meaningful conversation with the community. It's totally different. And then we grow together. I had in countless opportunities at this point. My boss knows that I love climate, so every time that there is a course, he's like sending it over to me. So like, if you really want to get into this, you have our support. And then we make an impact. Yes, I've seen it. I have felt it, that not only during the time that I was in the countries, I was also invited into the Circularity Working Group that is part of Sustainability Corporate, and I was asked for my input. I was asked for what I see the future will hold, and I know that for better or for worse, my opinion counts in the new strategy that we have today. So that's great. And then my personal and professional ambition. As an environmental engineer, I want to be on the right side of history. I want to be in leading companies that actually see potential in doing the right thing. I know that it's better to play with the enemy. However, I think that change needs to be through example. And at StarCraft, it is the biggest renewable company in Europe. So they're really the good place to be. Thank you.
So, if you have any questions.
Thank you for the great presentation. My name is Asfan Diyar, and I have a question about what is an ideal profile of a candidate look like to be selected to a program like the trainee program by StarCraft? What set of skills, soft and technical, do you look at? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yes. So when it comes to a trainee, so we have roles in lots of different parts where you can be in the strategy, in finance, in the engineering hydropower dam area. So it does vary. So if I think around kind of just what aspects do we look at across the board, I think definitely there is a lot of our trainees have master's degrees, just and upwards. I think that is, just to be totally transparent, that is definitely one of the aspects. We also look at things like, have you gone on exchange? Have you had any international exposure as well? It could be internships, working throughout your studies, but just that you have stepped outside of your comfort zone. Because moving to, let's say, I think Alejandra's example of Cork, I mean, that can be pretty challenging. And I mean, I've heard we have some going to Wales and it can be challenging. So I think someone who's a bit resilient and knows how to cope going out of that comfort zone is also an aspect. And then the other is curiosity, and this is something we evaluate through the assessments as well. So both pre-interview, but also during the interviewing cases, is also kind of your way of thinking. So I'd say kind of the curiosity piece as well, problem solving, analytical reasoning. So those kinds of aspects, if that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. We have here a question, especially for you two that started at Statkraft, and also for us that we are studying and starting our careers. And if you could share a little bit of the main challenge that you faced in your early career at Statkraft, and how did you overcome it?
Well, yeah. So I was in 3 different teams. So I experienced 3 different management styles. So at the beginning, you have to navigate what you appreciate the most. Do you like flexibility, or do you like to have a manager that is hands-on with you, or you feel like there are some tasks that you are capable to do it by yourself? So during this experience, I had the opportunity to reflect on what do I like when I go to work, how do I work best, and how I build the network with my team so we can actually work together and be a team. So it's like you have to find your place in the team, but also have the opportunity to reflect on that so you know how to bring value to them.
Thanks for the answer.
And for me, I kind of covered it in the presentation, but it's actually just knowing what I wanted to do was the biggest challenge. And you can see that from the range of positions. I don't think I'll be using GIS again in my career, but it was a useful skill to acquire. I think the main, and without trying to sound too grandiose, the main takeaway that I've had from that is if you just chuck yourself in 100% into what you're doing, it's not going to be a wasted period of time, even if it's not the career that you end up doing long term.
So thanks for sharing your experiences. And I wanted to ask, so you have really impressive numbers in terms of female on top management. And in the end, we all know that, a company like this, it's mostly technical positions like STEM backgrounds, and we all know that there's a lack for female in those with those backgrounds. So I'm wondering, what do you do as a company to actually achieve those numbers? Because you were sharing, I believe, 33% on the slide, but you mentioned even up to 50% on top management positions.
Yep.
So what are those measures that you're taking?
Yes. So I think, to be honest, we recently professionalized the recruitment area in the last 3 years. So before that, it was a bit, we want to be 40%, but we're not sure how. So now we're doing a number of different initiatives. The first is you have to go earlier. So we know, for example, that young women, when they are choosing what to specialize in around grade 10, typically, that is when they tend to decide whether they will continue in the STEM topics. So we are engaging more with that age group. We've started quite a bit in Norway, which is, there's also there's an expectation of us to support the communities as well. So to support young women continuing on in STEM. And then the other, so on the experience, the kind of more the expert area, but then also on the skilled workers area as well, which is, to be honest, we have 20% women represented in the Nordics business area, which is where a lot of our skilled workers are. And so now we are starting to work within the communities because a lot of these sites are in remote locations. And it's a very finite group of both men and women. So we will start working and building one awareness of who we are and what we can offer, and then supporting through apprentice programs. Again, typically between grade 11 and grade 12, because that's kind of where, so it's going a few steps back. And so that's just on the grassroots side. But then the other is when you recruit people in who have experience, you need to make sure that when it comes to interviewing, you have representation in that group, right? And then you choose the best candidate. It's not, and I think sometimes we don't want the reverse discrimination feeling, but as long as you have a diverse group of candidates, then you choose the best person, regardless of who they are. But if you don't have that diversity in the first instance, it's very difficult to get there. So those are just a few examples.
Thanks. We'll have a last question.
Hello. Thank you for your presentation. Very nice. Congratulations also on the journey of each one of you. It looks really great. Like almost like a perfect company, which is as it should be for a presentation. So I wanted actually to ask, what is the most boring task that you have to do, like on a daily basis, and also especially for the two more young workers, like if being in a company of this size has any kind of limitations for you, if you feel in some kind of way, I don't know, limited on your creativity, or not, or if it's just really great. Thank you.
I can start on that. Is this working?
Yeah, it's working. Just put it close.
Okay. Boring tasks. There's a long list, and there tend to be. I have a list every day of what I'm going to do for that day, and the boring ones tend to be pushed to the next day quite a lot. So timesheets, like any sort of admin, I think it's unavoidable. But to your question, there's definitely drawbacks. There's definitely drawbacks with working in any large company. I think something that I found really frustrating, particularly working in hydrogen, where it's an innovative technology, these opportunities appear and then disappear quite quickly. You need to be quite nimble. And just inherently working in a company with 6,000 employees, very strict investment protocol, you're sometimes sort of hamstrung a little bit by that. You can't move as quickly as you'd maybe want to be. But that's where your sort of personal drive and energy kind of has to overcome some of those barriers. So they're sort of barriers, but they're not insurmountable, I would say.
Yes, actually the biggest challenge for me is how we're organized sometimes. It is called a matrix organization. So we are supposed to be working together, but sometimes it's a bit blurry to know who has like the final say, even though that is sort of like they have the description of the role, so they have the description of what is the objective of a unit. But then when we're actually talking together, that can be really blurry, and decisions sometimes get delayed. But it's fun. It's fun because it's a mess. No, it's not a mess, but it's fun. Yeah. And then when it comes to boring tasks, even though that I love them, PowerPoints, they can be boring sometimes.
Yeah. And maybe just from, it does, even kind of being in a more senior role, I would say the management system is incredibly challenging. So kind of how do we all work in the same way? When, again, sometimes I'm Canadian, I'm not Norwegian, but there can be, a bit, everyone has their say. And that's a great aspect. But when it comes to one way of working, you can't do that. So that can be it's like herding cats sometimes is how it feels, right? We want to all work in one standardized way, but there's always variations floating around. So just trying to capture it all, that can be frustrating, for sure. And invoices are frustrating. So there we go.
Thank you.
So, thank you very much, Kate, for talking about StatCraft, and for Harry and Alejandra for sharing their journeys at the company. I think it's always great to hear from young people about their experience there, and I'm sure you're going to be chased for questions, so do find a good hiding spot if you don't want to answer them. Now, we're close to the end of the day, but you cannot be saved by the last working session. It is the last working session and the last World Café, so make good use of that time after the coffee break. So 3:45, go back to your working groups, and then, sorry, I'm trying to remember. Yes, and then come back. You're going to have around 2 hours to work on that, and then come back to the auditorium at 5:45, okay? Yes?
Are we going straight for World Café groups or to our own groups? What café?
I think it's already shared.
Yeah. So here we have the groups. It's been posted on Slack and WhatsApp. If you're not, take a picture here if you're not sure where to go. But we're going to have a coffee break now, and you're welcome to join us as well.